Making up round 16 of the Formula 1 season would be the Temple of Speed. No, not Glasgow, and we were only in the Netherlands last week. Though F1 Twitter certainly were high on something coming into Monza. Hey there guys, I'm Will, welcome to FP1 and the Comedy Review, the series run by a man that still thinks Ferrari can win the World Championship. No, who am I kidding? They're f***ed. F1 would return to Italy and the Autodromo Let's try that again. F1 would return to Italy and the Autodromo Nazionale what the f***? I can't say the name. F1 would return to Italy and the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, where we've seen shocks in the last 2 years. In 2020, Pierre Gasly took a sensational first win for AlphaTauri, and in 2021, Daniel Ricciardo had pace. Before we jump into things, if you end up enjoying the video, be sure to drop it a like and get subscribed for more. But now let's get into the comedy review for the Italian Grand Prix.
We are a fucking bunch of wankers.
So it's news time, and with Ferrari playing f***up bingo in the last few Grand Prix, they decided to pass off the bad press by launching a special livery, celebrating 100 years of the Monza circuit. This was great news for Carlos Sainz, who got to don the yellow suit again as he reminisced about his time at Renault, back when he was in a team that were actually competent. The driver market was also still in full swing, with Red Bull trying to sign IndyCar driver Colton Herta to AlphaTauri, just in case they lost Pierre Gasly to Alpine. Issue was, Herta doesn't qualify for a super license, meaning this was a problem of Red Bull's own making, since this was only introduced after they signed this dude called Max Verstappen. I think that turned out alright though. Whether Herta gets the drive remains to be seen, at least at the point I record this segment of the video anyway. But a lot of team bosses were very salty about the idea. And on the subject of salt, F1 Twitter weren't particularly happy this week. Not that that's much of a surprise at this stage. Now, I may have joked in last week's comedy review that AlphaTauri staged Yuki Tsunoda's retirement to help Red Bull, but I didn't think anyone would actually take that seriously. Yet even now, I still underestimate how uniquely challenged these people are. Usually, they'd resort to racism in this scenario, but this time, they tried out a new weapon from their arsenal. Sexism. Red Bull head of strategy Hannah Schmitz got the majority of the abuse, though once again she left it to AlphaTauri to do the work in responding. Oh god, sorry, let's just move on. On to FP1 then, and it would be Charles Leclerc and Ferrari taking top spot in front of their beloved fans. Carlos Sainz was P2, though again was much more comfortable in the gravel. Next up were Mercedes, who looked to be in good form. Lewis Hamilton, however, would have to start the race from the back of the grid, Mercedes unable to save the power unit that went skyward in Belgium. He will be one of many taking new engine components in Monza, meaning we get another mixed up grid for Sunday's race. Now, I would normally be excited about this, but it didn't help Belgium, so let's just wait and see. First practice would also see the return of Dutch driver Nick de Vries. This time he took Vettel's spot at Aston Martin, and clearly inspired by the four-time world champion, he went into the gravel at Ascari. FP2 would see Ferrari remain at the top of the table, as they found going straight on at Monza's two chicanes suddenly made them look a lot quicker than Red Bull, until their lap times were deleted of course. Verstappen and Perez had got a lot of the stick after last week. Trying to hide behind their own tyre smoke though probably wasn't the best idea on Friday. Away from the top teams, Lando Norris was once again on form for McLaren, finishing P4 at the end of the hour. The Briton sadly broke up with his girlfriend before the last race in Zandvoort, but if his best date idea was going to McDonald's, I can't say I'm particularly surprised. You can probably tell already that not much else happened in FP2, so let's move straight on to Saturday. And now it will be Max Verstappen showing what he can do for Red Bull, as he topped the times in FP3. Nobody really cared though, as one of his ex-slaves, Alex Albon, came down with appendicitis earlier that morning, meaning De Vries was back and Nicholas Latifi was shitting himself. Despite missing the first half of the session, the Dutchman did a great job to finish 14th, celebrating by playing in the sand at the first Lesmo. Meanwhile, Bottas showed Ferrari what he thought of the reliability of their engines, in what continued to be an incident-free Monza weekend. But you may have noticed that I've ignored a certain team so far, and that's because, I've been looking forward to saying this, it's time for Haaswatch.
fucking bunch of wanko.
God, that felt good. It's been a while since Haaswatch has featured on the comedy review, and that's mainly because they've been pretty decent as of late. Monza, however, would be a return to Shittville. FP1 would see the team turn to Jesus to aid its misfortune. Giovinazzi back as he tries to turn 0 points in the Formula E Championship into a Formula 1 drive. This meant Schumacher would sit out the session, and when he returned for FP2, it wasn't long before his car requested the Messiah back. That meant third practice would be his only representative running before qualifying. However, he'd miss half the session after his team fitted his clutch backwards. Yeah, I wish I was making that one up. Things would only go from bad to worse as qualifying rolled around. P19 and 20 for the American team, in what at least would improve after the 20 trillion drivers with penalties ahead are shuffled to the back. They would join the Aston Martins and Latifi in the Q1 drop zone, De Vries instantly outpacing his more experienced teammate, which I'm sure went down like a filled balloon at Williams HQ. Nick's luck would run out in Q2, however. Looking on for a solid P12, his rear end would go to check on how Albon was doing at the second chicane. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't looking forward much to this session, as this is usually where we see Ricciardo drown compared to Lando Norris. However, this week Danny decided to pull out this thing called pace, comfortably getting into Q3 as Ocon, Tsunoda and the two Alfa Romeos failed to progress into the final part of qualifying. Let's talk about that then, and it would be all about the tow in Monza, as cars following in another slipstream could see an improvement in lap time of up to a quarter of a second. With Carlos Sainz taking a grid penalty, he was expected to play slave to Charles Leclerc, going out ahead and punching a hole in the air for his teammate. But let's remember that this is Ferrari. So who do you think came out first? Carlos, therefore unsurprisingly, took provisional pole after the first runs. However, Leclerc and Ferrari found their brains second time round as the Monegasque shot to provisional pole. Max, meanwhile, would end up slipping between the Ferraris, but has a 5-place grid penalty for the race, meaning he should start 7th, but I'll be honest, I haven't a fucking clue. The Red Bull's race pace once again looked dominant though, so would it be a 5th win in a row for Max? Let's jump to Sunday and find out. The top two would get away well, but Lando Norris pulled off the line like he was still in the McDonald's drive-thru. That promoted Ricciardo up to 3rd, as everyone more or less made it safely around turn 1. Verstappen though had already got bored, and turned his difficulty slider down to easy. By lap 3 he was already on the podium, and chasing after the Mercedes of George Russell in P2. Russell could have fought for 2nd, but decided he couldn't be bothered, letting Verstappen through on lap 5. But things weren't going completely swimmingly at Red Bull. Both cars were on fire, just one of them literally, Sergio Perez making an early pit stop with smoking brakes. The Red Bull mechanics decided to sort Checo's problem by standing there and looking at it, which funnily enough didn't do anything. Could have been worse though. You could have been Sebastian Vettel. He was driving an Aston Martin, and had an engine problem, but I think the first one's still worse. That brought out a VSC, prompting many into the pits, including Leclerc, suggesting this was probably the wrong thing to do. As Charles went on to the mediums, the focus was on his teammate. Sainz was coming from the back, and admittedly doing a fantastic job, passing Ricciardo on lap 14 as the Aussie tried out a career change of being a train driver for the middle phase of the race. 12 laps later and Max would pit, putting in P2, but 10 seconds behind Charles Leclerc, as Red Bull played the waiting game of how will Ferrari fuck up the race today. Having spun the wheel of misfortune, the Scuderia would settle on strategy this weekend, boxing Charles for softs with 20 laps to go, hoping he would be able to make up the 19-second gap and pass the race leader in an extraordinary finish. Now, admittedly, looking back, the Ferraris were probably screwed either way, but come on, it's way more fun to take the piss out of them. Let's take a break from that lead scrap and move on to a battle no one probably cares about, but I'll still cover anyway. Schumacher versus the GOAT, with Mick making a stunning move on the Canadian into turn 1. Even if it did look like he'd just made a mistake at first. Slightly further up the road, Daniel Ricciardo was actually having a really good race. He was on track for a strong top 10 finish, and though McLaren gave Norris the better strategy again, which I'm totally not angry about whatsoever, he was still holding up the AlphaTauri for fuck's sake. With the Monza race winner's curse continuing for a 3rd straight year, the safety car would come out, and everything would go to shit. The FIA seemed a little confused as the safety car picked up the Mercedes of George Russell, apparently thinking it was 2020 again. All the while, the marshals were trying to move Ricciardo's car through the use of the force, which didn't work. Big surprises there. It was decided that the race would end under safety car, with Max making it 5 wins in a row, finishing ahead of a less than happy Charles Leclerc. And I've not mentioned him all race, but big congrats to Nick De Vries, who came home P9, taking a metaphorical gun and shooting Latifi's career point blank in the head. But let's go back to that finish, and oddly enough, fans weren't particularly happy about it. Now look, besides Danny Rick, I'm more of a neutral fan, but this is all how you wanted it to end after Abu Dhabi. I guess we just can't expect F1 Twitter's brains to be capable of going back that far. My view here is either leave things the way they are, or take the IndyCar approach and red flag the race. That way everyone gets the dramatic finish they were drooling for today, and teams can switch onto new tyres, putting everyone more or less onto level pegging. Unlike Abu Dhabi. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the comedy review. If you do, drop it a like and get subscribed. We've had a lot of growth recently, so a massive welcome to everyone who's just joined in the last few weeks. A big thank you as well to all my patrons, and if you want to support the channel, or just check out any of my other socials, you can find all the links to that down in the description below. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you soon with another video, but until then, have a good one.